views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Tonight, it's the debate for the Democratic primary in the 14th City Council District, a district that includes the Bronx neighborhoods of Fordham, Kingsbridge, Morris Heights, and the West Bronx, and also University Heights. All three candidates who are on the ballot are here with us tonight. They are Randy Abreu, who has worked as a law fellow on Capitol Hill in the FCC and the House Judiciary Committee, and was appointed by President Obama to serve in the U.S. Department of Energy. The incumbent is Councilmember Fernando Cabrera, who has served in the City Council since 2010 and is the chair of the Juvenile Justice Committee and co-chair of the Gun Violence Task Force. And also on the ballot, Felix Palermo, who has experience as a teacher and also in adult education. Tonight's debate is co-sponsored by the Bronx Times and also the Bronx Free Press and the League of Women's Voters, a nonpartisan political organization that advocates for informed and active participation in government and works to increase understanding of major public policy issues. The primary election is Tuesday, September 12th, and all eligible voters are, of course, encouraged to vote. Candidates, in tonight's debate, I will direct the question to one candidate. That candidate will respond, and then we'll have a free-flowing dialogue that each candidate can participate in, with the original respondent having the final say on the question before the next question is asked. At the end of the program, each candidate will be given the opportunity to deliver a one-minute closing statement. Please note that tonight's questions include those submitted by the candidates themselves. By prior agreement, the first question will be directed to Randy Abreu. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Let's start by comparing experience. You have worked, as we have just documented, in the Obama administration. Councilmember Cabrera has been in the incumbent since 2010, which certainly gives him experience in the city council. Mr. Perdomo is a school teacher and has been in education for many years. How important is experience here, and whose experience is the most relevant?
And Gary, thanks again for having me here and for having me in the BronxNet studio today. I think I'll answer that in two parts. I'm the only candidate up here who was born and raised in this community that I look forward to representing really soon. When it comes to government experience, I'll put my experience drafting legislation, drafting regulations, sitting at the table in Washington, D.C. and discussing policies with federal leaders on the table against what Fernando and what Felix have done any day of the week. I've worked to defend Planned Parenthood. I've worked to defend immigrants in Washington, D.C. I've worked to push the digital divide in the United States, and I've worked on clean energy and renewable energy projects at the federal level. These are skills that translate easily to the city council level because I'm also an attorney who understands procedure, who understands how to get things done. Again, what I think is most important here, on top of all of that, is that I'm the only candidate that was born and raised in this community.
Thank you very much. I'm assuming everybody wants to talk about their experience.
Well, Gary, thank you so much.
Cabrera, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity as well to be here. You always run a very fair debates. Perhaps Randy doesn't know this, but I was actually born in the Bronx, been working in our community for 28 years. When you compare our records, you will find somebody that, myself, for 28 years, I've been working as a pastor. For the last 7.5 years as a council member. Randy, unfortunately, does not have not one organization that he talked about that he has raised here, that has raised as a grassroots operation, nonprofit, He has absolutely no track record. He left when he was 18 years old for his career and internships that he was doing, and then literally he went down to shut down the lights at the end of Obama's administration. We need somebody that has the track record to produce. And here's the other thing that I want the audience to know, and that is that now I will be the senior most member in the Bronx. That will give me the opportunity to have the highest committee and the highest leadership position that is going to enable me to bring the most resources and the more networking power to our district.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Perdomo?
Thank you, Gary. This is an excellent question to debate. My name is Felix Palermo. I was born in Dominican Republic, but I came to this country with all the difficulties that anybody in my community has right now. I came without knowing what was affordable. I know I came here without any education opportunity. So connecting with the people of this community, that's basically the issues that this community right now is facing. If you go through the entire district, you can see all the needs of our constituents. That's why I'm the best candidate, because I know the problems that are arising every day in my community. And if I get elected, I'll probably be connected in any way to any constituents.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Abreu, you can have the final word on that.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. And I would agree with Felix. And he and I are candidates that are on the ground on a daily basis, that understand what people are doing, that need to survive. To respond to Fernando's comment, I left the Bronx, New York at the age of 18 because I had a scholarship to go to college. I got a scholarship to go to law school. During these times, I still brought resources and funding back to my community. The Concourse House right around the corner, a women's shelter. I helped start the first ever digital library in the Concourse House. So it's unfortunate that only 5 minutes into this debate, Fernando's already spreading rumors and spreading lies. To finish that point up, it's not Fernando's best argument to say that he will be the most senior member in the city council because he's been there for so long. His last 8 years have seen our district regress, lose money in terms of income. The only thing that seems to go up these days is asthma. So I can't believe that the people of my community think that 4 more years of the same is good for us.
You can
I
certainly
would love
follow
to
up.
respond.
He'll
He
get the
actually-
final word eventually.
He actually doesn't know what's going on in our community. We have unemployment that went down from 23.5, according to the Furman Center at NYU, all the way down in 2015 to 7.85. And if you compare it to Riverdale, and they had it at 7.4, we went from number 1 to number 20. Because he hasn't been here, he doesn't know about these things. He doesn't know that we have improved when it comes to lowering crime, 67% down in all murders in the 52nd precinct and 37% down at 46 precincts.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to weigh in, and then we'll give you
Yes,
the final word, and then we'll go to the next
Yes,
question.
I just want to say one thing. Those numbers, I don't know where those numbers come from, because everywhere you go, this is the same problem. We have unemployment. People don't have jobs right now. We need somebody that take this community together and educate people, bring jobs fair. We don't have that in the last 8 years. So,
Okay. Mr. Abreu, you get the final word, and then we'll go to another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, the comment patting themselves on the back, our politicians, about unemployment going down ignores a very real issue in our community. Underemployment is still through the roof. It is not a success when our young people are working as waiters, when our young people are driving taxis. These are not career track jobs. Fernando has no vision for the next 4 years in our community, and that's dangerous.
Let's follow up on that and talk a little bit about the unemployment numbers, and I'll just restate what you gentlemen have said. You boasted just a moment ago that unemployment is down in the district from 23% to just over 6%. Mr. Abreu had said on our program on BronxNet in the district that income levels have gone down in the district since 2013. He says they've gone from $33,000 to $30,000 a year. So what is the reality for the economic outlook for the people in the 14th CD, and what is needed to improve it?
Well, Gary, I'm glad you brought those numbers, but he's wrong again. I'm shocked that a college graduate is not getting his numbers in data correct. Again, if you go to the Furman Center, they have the most accurate numbers, combining all the federal, state, and city numbers in the data. I brought them right here in anticipation of this question. 2006, before the recession, right before the recession, when the economy was at its highest, the median income for the university, Fordham and University area, we're talking about $24,300. In 2015, $24,450. Now let's compare that to BronxNet, where it was $61,000, and in 2015 it was down to $51,000. So the point is, we had the worst recession, Gary, and he wasn't here during that time to address these issues. But we did a tremendous turnaround during that time, and the numbers clearly show that we were able to rebound.
So let's just get some clarity behind numbers are one thing, and then we can have your colleagues debate it. What was it, in your estimation, that made those numbers happen and that brought good news to the district?
Well, in the city council, we worked together. I worked together with my colleagues to bring the most comprehensive systemic job development program in all of the United States. We had literally pumped millions and millions of dollars that has been able to generate not only economic development, but straight one-to-one job development area, including in my own office. I have somebody who's dedicated in bringing job development. So I'm very proud of the track record and the bouncing back that we had in our district that we had not seen even in other prosperous districts.
I assume Mr. Abreu, I'm assuming you want to respond.
Yeah, it's interesting that the councilman will continue to say he knows what's going on in the community when it's clear that there's over 20,000 undocumented immigrants in District 14 alone. These are dark income figures that the councilman doesn't seem to either understand are real or doesn't want to acknowledge they are real. These incomes are also going down in our community. Jobs are not going up in our community. Income levels have decreased since he took office in 2010, and there's no economic outlook for our young people in the community. If we continue to go down this path, I'm afraid that the cost of doing nothing is the displacement of our community.
Okay, we'll let Mr. Perdomo weigh in, and then council member, you can have the final
The
word.
reality is totally different. The picture that Mr. Cabrera is presenting is not correct. We have a high numbers of unemployed people in our community. So I don't know, the reality is different in the community. When you go out there and you talk to people, that's the problem. There's no jobs.
Thank you. You get the final word, sir.
Gary, again, they're giving anecdotal statements. They're just saying what I see. The immigrant community, where is your data? I'm giving, let's talk about reality, let's talk about research. I was a college professor. I tell you, if my students would have came with this type of presentation, they would have definitely not passed.
Mr. Perdomo, on BronxNet's program in the district, you talked at length about tenant protections. Recently, the City Council passed key tenant protection and anti-harassment laws, including the right to counsel. What was in those laws that you like, and what still needs to be done? Well,
the law itself, it's really good. The problem, what I don't like is that it's the implementation of that law. There is no really key part of this law when we can say, hey, any tenant can go and read the book and implement it by the same person. It's an excellent idea and question being placed into reality, but the implementation of this law, that's what we have to see, how we're going to implement, because the fact that we have a law, it doesn't mean that a bill in the city council, it doesn't mean that we're going to implement that way.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, the idea of tenants or tenant protections?
Yeah,
you can go first, and then you, sir. Mr. Abreu, go ahead.
I commend the City Council on moving these bills forward. Some of them have been sitting around the City Council since 2014. Our tenants, especially here in the 14th District, deserve protection against landlord harassment. what I do think should be looked at closely is how the definition of landlord harassment is defined in these bills, and we will need to expand on that moving forward. Just on what I see on the ground here, it's not all encompassing. What I do agree with wholeheartedly about these bills is now the tenants will have a right of action against landlords in housing court. However, I will point out that Fernando did not support the majority of these bills. I think if there was 12 bills, he only supported one of them, and he was absent on the days that the city council voted. So he did not stand up for our tenants.
Wow, wow. Again, all you have to do, and I welcome everyone to go to the New York City Council website and see that I'm a co-price sponsor of these bills. I'm 100% for them. And my colleague, Mark Levine, he knows that I had he had the full support from me. Look, I was the author of the Tenant Bill of Rights. I'm the one who brought funding for affordable housing. Otherwise, we would have not had the opportunity to have the level of affordable housing that we have right now if it wasn't for the funding that I have brought forth. So my record, I'm very proud of it, and the people in the community know that. When it comes to Randy and comes to Felix, again, there's nothing they can say today. I welcome them to say, hey, what have you done for housing? And literally, there's nothing on the record.
We'll give Mr. Abreu a chance to do that, and you get the final word, sir. So you, and then you, sir.
Yeah, during the extent of, especially during this campaign, as I'm approaching people and as I'm engaging people, Fernando, I've been doing the job that you should have been doing on the ground. I've been attending housing court, defending our tenants, while the truth is, in 2013, when Fernando ran for re-election, the real estate board funded his re-election campaign handsomely with almost $40,000. Ever since then, he's turned his back on our tenants. He supports the real estate and the
certainly respond to that, and then we'll let you.
As a matter of fact, 50% of the funding I have for this election right now came from unions. I have most of the unions, including DC 37, 32BJ, Carpenters Union, Mason Tenders. I could go on down the list. 50%. Who are you talking about? You're talking about Fernando Rodriguez, one of my best friends, a Latino who worked very hard and making sure that as a contractor. Are you talking about Thomas Campbell, an African American who gave some funding? And we're talking about $3,000, $4,000 in this race. Come on, let's keep it real. What really matters here, what I'm talking about, and look at the amount of funding you got from out of state. The reality is, we look at the track record. He said he did it during his candidacy. Where were you before that? That's what I'm talking about. It's easy. It's very easy, Gary, to do it when you're running in grandstand.
Let's let you speak, but I'm sure you want to respond to the question about funding, and it's important. So you get the word since it was your question, and then we'll go to you.
All right. I think during the last 2 years, this community has faced a lot of problems with housing, and this is one of the highest problem in this community. And eviction is in the district is one of the top number getting to 14th district. So I don't know. I agree with Randy. Housing has been the most important problem in our community.
So just on the charge about out-of-state campaign contributions.
Just really quickly, I think it's always important to look at who's the individual donating to your campaign. With me, it's a lot of young people, progressives, leaders of this country of color. Fernando has accepted over $2,000 from a real estate developer from Texas who supports fracking. And when he says, what have I done over the last 4 years? I've worked in the federal government preparing for this moment. I interned for the Attorney General of New York while investigating Fernando for supporting hate laws in Africa. That's what I've been doing over the last 4 years.
Can I answer that?
You certainly can, and then we'll take a break. But you do get the final word, sir, if you want to have it.
I had a video where I talk, and you know my personal views when it comes to some couple of social issues. He's taking something totally out of context, where I was just talking about how we have, can I finish? So we have my personal views sharing about some social issues, and then he tries to tie it with the government of Uganda. I mean, it's really ridiculous.
Okay, you get the final word, and then we're going to take a break, sir.
Yes, I can see for a fact that District 14 is one of the highest in eviction in this country, and especially in New York City. So we have to stop that. People are suffering so much because there is no help from City Council.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, we'll take a break, folks. It is the Democratic primary debate for the 14th City Council District. We will be right back.
Welcome, everybody. We are open. I'm the Dr. Bob Lee from 107.5 WBLS. You can catch me on there each and every night right after the Quiet Storm. You can catch me right here on Open, 10 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. Let's just call it on the 10s and then just keep it tuned. And we got you covered like a blanket, okay? I'm out in the community and we're all over the place because we are now open.
Okay, back with you on Bronx Talk for the 14th City Council Democratic primary debate. Next question goes to you, Mr. Abreu. You have called for a stop to the city's Jerome Avenue rezoning efforts, but now it's on track toward a ULURP. Mr. Cabrera says that the Jerome Avenue rezoning will bring 4,000 new units of affordable housing, although many in the district don't necessarily believe that, given the ongoing protests about what they think this will bring to the district. So, what is the bottom line on the Jerome Avenue rezoning, and how will it affect the 14th City Council district?
Yeah, this entire process shows me again that Fernando is not present, that he's absent, he does not understand the true needs of our community. The Jerome Avenue rezoning, moving through the ULURP process, the public comment and review process, right after community leaders marched on the streets of Jerome Avenue to call for a stop, shows that the City Council and the mayor and Fernando did not have our best interests in mind. We need to slow this process down to make sure the rezoning is comprehensive. We need to make sure the community's voices are heard, which means anti-harassment bills are pushed forward, deeper levels of affordability to make sure it isn't just supportive and middle-class people that find housing. And absolutely, we need to make sure that the hiring for these contracting jobs, construction jobs in Jerome Avenue is local hiring, and we have a lens towards our unions. If we don't have a critical look towards how do we bring the Bronx up from the bottom with Jerome rezoning, we completely fail, which is why I've called for a stop to Jerome rezoning until we can make sure our community grows. We have a shared ownership and shared wealth in the new Jerome rezoning.
Yeah, I assume you want to respond.
Thank you so much, Gary, because again, the no-show person here is Randy and Felix. None of them were at the ULURP session that we had at Bronx Community College. I was there from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The only elected official was there from 4 o'clock until 12 o'clock, sitting there, listening literally to everyone who spoke that day. They were not present. He knew he was going to run. Why he wasn't there? Let me address the second thing, because I think it's very important. Because it's a novice approach that he's taking. Very obvious. He don't understand how negotiations work in the city council. The biggest leverage that a council member could have is at the very end of the process, when the mayor is going to turn to the council member, because without the council member's vote, he will not get what he wants. And this is exactly why I moved forward with Councilmember Gibson to have certification.
First of all, I agree with Randy. There is no input from the community. We need to go back to the table and talk about this. We can spend 2 or 3 hours speaking about the same issue, but I feel like we have to go back to the table because there is no affordable housing in this project. We can say affordable for another part of the city, but it's not for this part of the Bronx. And another thing is, Fernando, I was there, by the way. I saw you.
You say you
Yes, I was
Well, I
there.
apologize. I don't remember
Okay.
you being there, but
Yes.
can I address what he just said?
Sure, but Mr. Abreu
because
gets the final word.
Here's a reality. The city planning has been having numerous meetings with the community. I've been in part of many of those meetings, listening to the community. What we have a difference here is not at the end game, it's the approach. And I have the experience in the city council on how to do that.
You get the final word, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I think that the councilman Fernando saying that I wasn't present and I wasn't involved in the process is it's kind of silly, considering that during that rally, during that march that we just had, Fernando was nowhere to be found. And I will wrap this up just by saying that at the town hall recently, where Mayor de Blasio stood in District 14, he told us all, over the last 2 years, while we've been developing this process for Jerome rezoning, I largely defer to the sentiments of the council member. So why is it that 2 years later, the community is still trying to get their voices heard? And to follow up on what Fernando says about negotiations, I don't know what they taught you at Liberty University about negotiating, but waiting till the very end to get leverage and bargaining is not how it's done. You come to the table ahead of time and you make your voice heard.
Gary, he's showing how little does he know. If you were to talk to any council member who has gone through this process, they would tell you that the power is at the end.
I want to follow up with a question that may be very relevant to this, and that's about the Kingsbridge Armory. Despite the governor promising more than $100 million in funding for the project, it's currently being held up in City Hall, apparently because there's no firm indication of when and how the funding will be delivered. It was widely reported, Mr. Cabrera, that in the original negotiations over the Armory, you had wanted $100,000 to be steered to a church before it was approved, and then you held up your support at the 11th hour before the project was finally approved. So, at this point, do you support the Kingsbridge Armory project, and what will it take to move it forward?
Well, let's talk first about fake news. Fake news were put out there. Why? I was holding on to the end for the very same reason.
That's why I brought it up.
Thank you, Gary,
relevant.
and I really appreciate it for the same reason that Randy is not aware how the process really works. Because I was trying to get funding from the developer, and I was successful to get $500,000 agreement, terms and conditions, to be able to get protection for our businesses, to be able to get funding for our youth, and to be able to get a traffic study. I was pushing for that, and at the 11th hour, I was able to get what we wanted. And in the CBO agreement that we have, we're talking about $1 million that's going to go to the community. They were throwing stuff out there. For what reason? Of course, because they were trying to derail me from the demands that I have, and I was successful.
Okay, others want to respond about the Armory, you, sir?
Yeah, I would say that you just pulled your best Donald Trump impersonation with the fake news, because it was the New York Times that reported that at the 11th hour, Fernando's in the room negotiating with other lawyers trying to get $100,000 a year in perpetuity for a nonprofit that he's associated with. That's what kind of kickback is that? With the community's interest in mind, that is not the way a council member should operate. With Kingsbridge Armory in mind, I've worked on memorandums of understanding in Washington, D.C. I understand community benefits agreements. I am in favor of the Kingsbridge Armory. I'm going to push that development forward so we finally get local jobs in the community. But as an attorney, I have a lens towards that community benefits agreement. I'm going to make sure the local hiring happens at the livable wages that were promised to us.
Let Mr. Perdomo weigh in, and then you can have the final word, sir.
Yes, as far as I know, the deal is there, but when it's going to be finalized, we don't know yet, because there's so much things inside that we don't know yet. So let's see what is the deal when it's coming. So because we don't know yet.
So that's the final word on this, and then we'll go to Mr. Perdomo.
Thank you, Gary. So number one, he's going to push the very deal that I was able to put together. I'm the one who pushed for the CBO to take place. I'm the one who pushed for the unions, for CBA to be there. So I'm the one who was there to make sure that the unions were supposed to get what they're supposed to get. The plan that he's saying that he's going to push forward is the very one I was successful. So thank you, Randy, for your compliment.
Mr. Perdomo, the 14th City Council District has the Kingsbridge Road Merchants Association, the Fordham Road Bid, and a bustling small business corridor on Burnside Avenue. What is the best way to help those small businesses do better?
Well, first of all, the city right now is not going to help the way they are doing business with the small business, by the way. Thank you for the question. I feel like we need to go and help them, give training to those community, to those small business. Coming to set up an account that we can provide funding for those business. And then also we can implement 1 year lease waiver for all of the business in that area.
Okay?
Thank you.
And then you get the final word, sir.
Well, look, in the business community, I've been
Oh,
able.
I'm sorry. He gets the final word.
Yeah, he
You
gets
can
the final
respond.
word.
I'm sorry.
So, look, the business community, Kingsbridge, the Kingsbridge Merchant Association, every year I've been able to allocate $25,000 to help them to be able to have the Christmas event. These are funding that otherwise would have come from their pocket. Now in Burnside, we're working to get in a bid. Part of the rezoning package was to get the city to allocate $1 million, and now Davidson Community Center is right now working towards that end. And so we are seeing now in our district the full support from the council to making sure that our businesses succeed.
Okay. Did you want to weigh in, sir?
Yeah, just briefly. I think Felix is starting to hit the nail on the head here. What's important to our small businesses is having economic stability, economic certainty. That comes in the form of long-term leases. Yes, Fernando will continue to say, I brought money here, I brought millions of dollars here and there, but without a vision, without a priority, this money goes nowhere, it falls through the cracks. What's important, a bill that Fernando used to support, and then after the real estate and landlord lobby funded him, he turned his back on. The Small Business Job Survival Act guarantees a 10-year lease with a right of renewal for another 10 years. That 20 years certainty in the market is exactly what our small businesses need right now to survive. Without it, we're going nowhere.
Can I
You
respond
want to
to
respond,
that,
and then you get the final word, sir.
What Randy does not know is the ongoing negotiations that we have behind the scenes regarding that bill. That bill is not going to pass right now. It's just not going to pass because the speaker is not allowing it to come to the floor. But I support it. I continue to support in spirit. I have some concern about some of the language that we have right now, and we're going to make sure that that bill passes and it comes to fruition.
You get the final word, sir.
Yes, once again, we have to, I see there is so many small business closed right now if you go through Kingsbridge. So what is the support from the city? So we need to go and help those business. Either long-time solution, it will be 10 years lease, back up with like an insurance from the city in case anything happens to those business. That's one of the reasons that we can do, help them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Abreu, Mr. Cabrera boasts that murders are down 67% in the district. He mentioned it earlier today, and that his Cure Violence program was at the root of 376 days in the 14th without a gunshot. Can you do better when it comes to safety and security in the 14th Council District?
I mean, let's get nothing wrong here. Fernando has made criminal justice an issue at the forefront of his 8 years in office. He's touted it over and over again, and he's done good work towards it. I just don't think he's done enough. What he's ignoring when he pats himself on the back and says statistics are down, they're showing crime is down, it's what my friends at the NYPD refer to as the dark figures of criminality. When there's a gang member who is robbed at gunpoint, is he going to report that crime? When there's an undocumented mother in her household who is assaulted by a man, is she really going to report that crime and take the risk of deportation? The dark figures of crime are rising in our community. Just ask any neighbor, Fernando. Ask anyone. There's gunshots are heard every night. It's gotten more dangerous over the last couple years than it ever was when you started in office, and that's the problem in our community.
What Randy may not know is that we have spotters now in the district, and we can identify exactly when we had gunshots. The second thing I want to mention is that we now have, through the Cure Violence Program that myself and Councilmember Jamali Williams started, it's not only the best program right here citywide, but it's nationally recognized as the best program all across the nation. Not only that, I was able to allocate over $3.2 million and also get the speaker to allocate this year another $1 million for police security cameras. We have seen the success also in working with the police department. You got to compare apples with apples. You can't say, oh, I'm going to bring in different variables. The variables have been the same. And as we see the numbers right now, we have seen unprecedented numbers, Gary, like we have never seen in terms of crime being down in all the categories.
You, sir?
Yes, I would say that we need to engage the community. We have to empower. We have to go through all the programs for the community. That way we can reduce and work with the police in terms of the community, and we can reduce the crime in that way.
Thank you very much. You get the final word, sir.
Thanks, Gary. I think for Fernando to continue to tout the same statistics that are going down shows that he's performing willful blindness, or he has not had a recent conversation with our NYPD. The dark figures of criminality are the issue in our community. There are crimes that don't go reported. Just ask any tenant in our community. There are gunshots that are being heard. There are assaults, robberies, and it's not getting safer in our community. I do think we need a different approach to engage our youth in the community. We need a council member who's going to walk the streets at night with the community police officers and start to build a community feel. Fernando's not going to get that job done.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. Folks, you're watching the 14th City Council Democratic primary debate on Bronx Talk. We, they, and you will be right back.
Coming to you from our BronxNet studios, 4 new shows highlighting some of the best of the Bronx has to offer. We sit down with political leaders on In the District and discuss local legislation, events, and issues. See how the community and business come together with The Bronx Now on BronxNet. Nosotros features leaders from our Latino community. Meet those who are moving to make a difference in public service, business, arts, and culture. Looking for new and exciting dining experiences? Then you'll want to savor the Bronx and try new restaurants and eateries that fill the borough with delicious dishes. We have it all, so experience the Bronx in new and fresh ways on BronxNet.
Back with you on Bronx Talk for the 14th City Council Democratic primary debate. And we go back around. I think we're up to you, Councilmember Cabrera. Let's talk about LGBT issues. You had, or it came up earlier, a reference to some statements you had made that were widely reported, where you praised the Ugandan government for Christians who you said took their rightful place and control of the government, and you seem to support their oppression of homosexuals. There have been many questions about your position on gay and LGBT rights. So I guess a fair question is, would you advocate for LGBT constituents in the 14th CD?
Absolutely, Gary. As a matter of fact, if you look at my voting record, I voted 100% for all of LGBT bills that we had in just as recent as last week. So obviously, it's a political atmosphere. People like to put their propaganda and to put the stereotypes. The Uganda situation, I was talking to a church. I took a video that I was speaking to another church in another place. I do not support, and I was very clear, the position of the government to go ahead and to oppress the LGBT community. What I was referring to there very clearly was about gay marriage. And I was for common law gay marriage, but not for gay marriage. And that's a position that I took and I have maintained since I was voted in, and that's representative, Gary, of the people in my district. And that's why they voted me in. Those are the values. What happens is we get people who have been out of the district so long, they capture all the values, they come into our district, and they get supported by people from outside of our district, and then they try to paint you like you're some kind of a hater. The reality is, my track record has clearly indicated that I've been there for the LGBT community.
Thank you. Others want to respond? Anybody?
Yeah.
Sure, Mr. Abreu, go ahead.
I believe that there's only 8% of voters that come out to vote for Fernando. So when he says this is representative of the people in his community, it may only be representative of his constituency at his church. And now those are the people he continuously has engaged over the last 8 years. Those are the people that continue to come out and vote for him. I believe in marriage equality. I think it's not just the law of the land. I think it's an issue that we should accept and move forward with, because especially here in our community, we have economic development issues, housing issues that need to be addressed first and foremost. I don't agree with the councilman in his sentiment against gay marriage. I believe in marriage equality, and I think that it's about time we have elected officials in New York City that believe in marriage equality.
Okay, Mr. Perdomo, you want to weigh in?
I believe as a Democrat that everybody has an opportunity to decide whether they want to be with who they want to be. People have ability and people have opportunity. So we give opportunity to decide whether they want to be. And we don't want, in my case, I won't deprive people from their rights.
Okay, and you get the final word, sir.
Again, Gary, I have worked with the LGBT members of the city council. As a matter of fact, my very first speaker was Christine Quinn, and I came in to work as a team member, and I worked with my colleagues, all 7 of them, and my track record speaks for it. Thank you for giving my church so many credit. He makes it sound like my church gets me elected. The fact of the matter is there's a lot more people in our district than that. And the churches and people of religious faith, they also know I've been very supportive of them. I'm the one who fought for the right to worship, to be able to run in public school. Randy, on the other hand, the other day, a couple of months ago, he went to a Catholic church, Holy Spirit Church, and his team were literally moved out of the private, that's a private, not a public place, on a Sunday morning, trying to collect petitions, interrupting their services. So I support churches, and I support all of the services that I do to everyone in my district.
Did you want to respond to that, or?
Yeah, that's an interesting story about the Holy Spirit Church. I mean, you might have to do another debate just on that date and what exactly is going on at Holy Spirit and behind the scenes at Holy Spirit, which Fernando is very closely involved with. But to set that record straight, we were on the sidewalk, and we were told by the church that we couldn't be on the sidewalk. As an attorney, I knew that that was bogus. But I would like to respond to one thing that Fernando said. He has a 100% track record supporting LGBT bills, resolutions at City Hall. There was a resolution in 2014, 2015 to provide education in public schools on African American, Latino, and LGBT history. Fernando did not support that resolution. So clearly he just lied. And then you really should do your own investigative reporting on what's going on at Holy Spirit.
You do get the final word, and then we do want to move on.
Church of the Holy Spirit is a tremendous church that's doing a lot in the community. It bothers me that people will make a scene at a church And that really bothers me, because people are going to church on Sunday to be able to receive and to fellowship, not to be harassed with petitions and so forth, and that's troublesome.
Just let me comment on
All right.
Fernando's. I was there too at the time. I was the first one that was moved out of the sidewalk. The reason we can say he has the father has a good relation with Fernando, so he's one of the supporters. I think it was illegal from the church trying to push people out of and harassing them.
Thanks for setting the record straight, Felix.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You get the final word, but let's
Yeah.
be quick because I'd like to move on.
We got to respect churches. I mean, people are going there to fellowship, to do the religious, to have a religious experience. And if you want to work with religious leaders, you got to be sensitive to what their requests are.
Mr. Perdomo, across the nation and here in the Bronx and in the 14th Council District, the opioid epidemic has reached a tragic boiling point. What is at the core of the issue, and can the problem be addressed before the fact to prevent drug use in the beginning rather than after the fact to try and treat that abuse? So
It's
you
an
get the
excellent
first word.
question. First of all, this education. When people have education, they are empowered. They can defend. They have the knowledge. They can attack the problem. So we need more education, more programs in that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Substance abuse, either of you?
So I have in this panel, I'm the candidate with the most experience. I was a substance abuse prevention counselor in the public schools. I worked as a director of a rehab program. So I'm very familiar with this issue. I've been able to work with different organizations in our district that are addressing this issue. I commend the First Lady for really tackling and coming forth with issues that we have to address regarding mental health issues. We need more funding. I mean, we need more funding to be able to work. Education, I agree with Felix that we have to do a better job in our public school. And the other piece here is the medical field, that the prescription drugs, the abuse that is taking place, we need the federal government to clamp down and to be able to help us in this epidemic.
Okay, you want to weigh in, sir?
And the root of the opioid epidemic is in the transportation of these drugs across state lines. It's an issue I worked on with the Attorney General back in 2014, a relationship he has closely with the Attorney General of Pennsylvania. To respond to Fernando's point about we need more funding for this epidemic, I wholeheartedly agree. And when you send mailers out saying, hey, we got $50 million for this, we got a new basketball court here, that's funding that probably should have been used more for our health, our economic development.
Can I address that? Because
Sure.
you obviously don't understand how funding works in the city council. When you have basketball courts that I've been able to build, like in St. James Park and Mount Hope Park and Grand Avenue parks, and the tennis courts that we're fixing and bringing brand new, you can't use that funding for that. That's called capital funding. And we're giving about $700,000 in discretionary funding. And that's really a minuscule amount of money for the vast problem that we have here. So he obviously don't understand how this process of funding works in the city, and this is why we need the mayor, we need the governor. They have the big pot to deal.
You
with
get the
this
final word,
epidemic.
sir.
Yes, I agree with Fernando. There's maybe Abreu doesn't have the experience in terms of the city, but I feel like we need more funding for this to create more programs for that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Abreu, let's talk about schools. You can be as specific as you want in terms of individual schools. How are the schools doing? Evaluate how they are doing in the 14th Council District, and what do we need more of? What do we need to do to improve them? Yeah. More charter schools, raising the cap on charter schools, is that something that you would favor?
No, I think we need a council member that's going to refocus our energy on our public schools. I'm proud to have gone to public schools in this community. PS 91 on near Burnside, MS 206 on 183rd Street. When I was in those schools, we were overcrowded, we were segregated, we were under-resourced. Today, we're still overcrowded, we're segregated, and we're under-resourced. We've lost track of the benefits of our public institution in our public schools. I do believe it's unfortunate that last year when Fernando ran for the Senate primary, he ran on funded largely with almost $250,000, or $750,000 from an organization that would have taken money away from our public schools. That's not the type of leadership we need right now. There's a huge opportunity in the 21st century to increase our public schools and focus on them as public institutions, especially when over 90% of our students here go to public schools.
Thank you. Gentlemen, Mr. Perdomo.
Yes, I'm a school teacher. I value education. As somebody that came to this country without knowledge of the English language, and charter schools are not really the focus. They don't take students with disability. They don't take students with ESL students. And for that reason, I'm really opposed to charter schools. I believe there's no solution. We need more funding for the schools and make the school much better. In our area, the schools are really lower performing schools. So we need to bring more programs for after school, for English language, math, and other academics subjects. So I believe that we need more investing in our district in that area, education.
Thank you very much. Then
Thank
you
you.
wanted to
So
weigh
just
in.
like Felix, I work also as a school counselor. He worked as a teacher in the New York City Public Schools, right here in Walton High School. So I have a first-hand experience of what it is to work in a public school. I was endorsed by the United Federation of Teachers. Why? Because they understand the work that I have done with them in pushing forth their agenda. Here's the thing, Gary. I brought over $15 million to renovate our schools, to bring technology into our schools, to fix our swimming pools. I even have kids playing violin today. READ program. We're talking about a vast amount of funding, the most out of any other council member in the Bronx. It shows my devotion. Last thing, very important, is that we have seen graduation rates go up from 65% to 72% in our district.
Okay, you get the final word. You got about 30 seconds before we're going to wrap it up.
Thanks, Gary. We continuously in the city, many politicians across this country continue to throw money at problems. That's not going to work anymore. What I will bring to the city council is I will bring a critical lens towards the education budget. Make sure that that vast, heavy budget is not all spent at the top, and a lot of that money finally makes it to our students, finally makes it so that they can have the futures that they deserve.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for participating in tonight's debate. We have come to the conclusion of the program, and by prior agreement, we will offer you each the opportunity to do a 1-minute closing statement, and also by prior agreement, Mr. Abreu gets the first one.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you all at home for tuning in. I believe that this campaign, there's really two specific choices on the path forward for our community. We can continue with the incumbent that we've had for the last 8 years, a man that has been supported by right-wing Republican groups that want to take money away from our public schools, a man that has been supported by the same landlords that are harassing us and kicking us out of our apartments today. Or we can take a different path for District 14 in the Bronx. We can choose a candidate who was born right here in this community, a son of this community who you helped grow into a lawyer, who just finished working with President Obama. Public service is in my heart, and I can't think of a better place to do it than right here at home in our community. I want to thank you all so much, and hopefully, I humbly ask you for your vote on September 12th.
Councilmember Cabrera.
Gary, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm just being so elated to be able to represent the 14th district, council matter district in the New York City Council. We've been able to bring murders down 66%. We've been able to bring unemployment down from 23% down all the way to 6.2. We're talking about being able to bring unprecedented amount of funding. And yes, money does matter. Funding does matter because that's what's going to build our community. We're talking about being able to fix our parks, being able to have a safer community, and being able to now have the highest position highest committee position and the highest leadership position in the Bronx to be able to bring the resources. I thank you for your previous support, and I thank you for your upcoming support.
Thank you.
Vote for me on September the 12th. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perdomo, the final word of the evening.
Thank you, Gary. My name is Felix Palermo. I wasn't born in this country, but I came with the same problems. I want to help this community. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that I have experience when I don't have experience. I'm not gonna come and say, hey, you're rich. It's easy to be poor and it's harder to be rich. I'm Felix Perdomo. I believe in this community. I believe that we can do better, but we have to get together and empower this community. September 12th, vote for Felix Perdomo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We certainly appreciate your participation today. As I mentioned earlier, to you privately, this really is the best of the Bronx to represent yourselves so people can be more informed. And while you might not agree on everything, I know that you will agree with me that every eligible voter should come out to vote on September 12th. Viewers, please note that it is a primary election, and so only registered voters enrolled in the Democratic primary in the 14th Council District can vote in this race. Also, we want to thank our co-sponsors. They are the Bronx Times, the Bronx Free Press, and also the League of Women's Voters. For more information, please call the League of Women Voters at 212-725-3541. Next week, it will be the candidates in the Democratic primary for the 8th Council District. We thank you for watching. We thank our producer, Lindsay. Our director is Brianna. And please make sure, get out and vote on September 12th. Good night.